You can do a whois lookup on Aaron, look up an IP address, find out kind of the vicinity of where the person is, and then you can, do advertising to them. Often when I'm on reputable news sites, I see, local girls in LA want to talk to you. You guys are all familiar with that, right? No? I'm the only one who goes to those reputable news sites. So what geolocation via XXXS? Anna visits my malicious site because I Facebook messaged her, and she trusted me because I was someone else after I broke his PHP sessions. Now, she visits my malicious site, and this XXXS scans the local network, her local network, for the type of router she's using. How does it do that? It's actually really simple. This is old info. Create an iframe, for example. This is just one way of doing it. There are many. Create your iframe, make it hidden, and you point to an internet URL, basically a local IP on your network, something that I can never access, but you, as a client, within your NAT, can access. So it's a 192.168 address, for example. Now I'm hitting here, setup.cgi, and I do an onload. What this says is, if I can hit this, if your browser, Anna, can hit this URL, that means you probably have a Belkin router. Well, if it can't hit that, it'll never hit my onload JavaScript. What if I can hit this 192.168.11 index.cgi? Then you're probably running a Fios router, for example. The list goes on. So you can basically detect any HTTP-based router. All right, that's cool. What next? Well, are any of you have routers or have people who have routers and they're like, I never really changed the admin credentials because the only way to get onto my routers, you have to be either physically plugged in, so you're either in my house or my dungeon downstairs or whatever you guys have, or you know my WPA password, for example, hopefully not web password. So how are they going to be able to access, my intranet? They're not going to. They're not going to be able to log in. So they don't set, they don't change admin, or my favorite password, change me. And they just leave it for the router. I'm not talking about WPA. I'm talking about admin credentials for your router. Well, what if you visit a malicious website and it detects what router you have and then again creates a form and then submits? You can now log into someone's router. You can log into the router with their default credentials even though you're not on their network. You don't have access to their network. All you're doing is their web browser is propelling this vulnerability and basically propelling this exploit for you. Pretty cool. Now, this isn't necessarily necessary in our geolocation XXXS attack. So what happens? Anna visits the site. We scan for the router type. If necessary, depending on the router, we may need to try to log in. We may not even need to log in at all. Then we XSS the router. All right? So we're going to XSS the router and load remote malicious JavaScript. So, for example, this is a real exploit on Fios routers where it hits an XSS and then it accesses a remote URL with JavaScript. Accesses that JavaScript. What's that JavaScript do? Well, being a router, you have a MAC address. Every network device has a MAC address. And it's similar to an IP address. It's basically the unique identifier for the piece of hardware that you have. Now, the MAC address typically is not a big deal. Knowing that MAC address, it's not big information. It's kind of like knowing an IP address. It just tells you sort of where something is. You can't really communicate with anything by a MAC address on the internet. You can only do that internally on your network, in general. Now, we use this remote JavaScript to basically access a local page on the router, basically a system information page, for example. So what we'll do is we'll use this AJAX thing I learned about a couple years ago accidentally, and we will access the system info and pull the MAC address and then send it to me. So Anna visits the website, loads this malicious JavaScript. It accesses your router's MAC address and sends it directly to me. All right, that's nice, but why MAC address? Like, what's so cool about that? All right, so if you don't know, just Bing it, right? Here, I'll help you. Open your browser, type www.bing.com, all right? When the search box opens, type in Google and hit enter. Okay? I'll wait. Oh, Google. They know everything. Does this look familiar? It was spying on me once, late with Anna. This is the Google Street View card. There's only one. Has a sweet camera. What it does is it tracks you wherever you go. There's one right there. Look. Maybe look. You guys know Street View. You know, you go to Google Maps and you type in an address, Planned Parenthood, and you go and you say, oh, you know, you can see Street View. Yeah, it's on that side of the street. You know exactly where it is. Well, these cars, what they do is they go around. It's really interesting. They go around driving. I would hate to be this guy. Driving down every single street in America. And as they're doing that, they're taking pictures all over. It's really a guy holding a camera. You'd think he was foreign. Like, ooh, America. And as they're doing this, one thing people don't really know is they're also watching Wi-Fi. Now, recently, a big Wi-Fi Google thing came up that you guys may have heard of. Basically, they were getting all this unencrypted information accidentally. I hate when that happens. And they were storing it. Oops. I had no idea we had petabytes of information on here. And that became a big thing, but that's actually not what we're going to be looking at. I'm not worried about that data that they were finding on unencrypted networks. I care about the data they're finding on encrypted networks. While they're driving, not only are they taking pictures, they're doing something else. They're watching the Wi-Fi networks, and they're watching the Wi-Fi packets. And within the Wi-Fi packets are your MAC address, specifically the MAC address of the router, right? The device that we just acquired recently. Now, if you remember, well, actually, as they're driving, they're also tracking GPS. GPS is very accurate. Another cool thing about Wi-Fi is their signal strength. You can know how strong something is, whether you get closer to it or whether you get further to it. If you have an iPhone, for example, there are 5 bars, and using an iPhone, you'll only ever have 1 or 2 in America. So you know whether you're closer to that signal or not. It's really weird. Here at Blackhat, I have 5 bars. I don't know why. I'm not sure what's going on. The quality is crystal clear, though. So what they're doing is they're actually tracking these Wi-Fi MAC addresses, the MAC addresses of your router. They're driving down the street, and they're saying, ooh, I see a signal. You know, that network says Linksys. But it's kind of far. The signal is maybe a 10 out of 100. They're driving further and further down the street. Oh, it's 50 out of 100. They drive further and further. Now it's 90 out of 100. They must be really close to that signal. Now it's going less. Now it's back to 80. Using very simple triangulation, they're determining exactly where that router is. And then as they go to the next street, they can, again, they're getting more signal strength information. And literally, they're doing triangulation to determine where your MAC address is. Now, how do you access this information? If you've been using Firefox, I'm not sure if anyone has seen this, but there's something called location services in Firefox. It's a feature that you can use JavaScript and determine where someone is. Now, don't worry too much. What happens is, if you go to a page that attempts to access this information, it'll ask you. It's nice. You'll have a little bar that says, do you want this information, or this website is trying to get information about your location. Would you like to share it? Most of you would click no. Unless you want to meet single girls tonight, in which case you might click yes. So the problem is, I'm never going to get Anna to click that information, click that box. I tried, she didn't. So what's something else we can do? Well, if you actually look at what's going on, when you click that button, Share Location, Firefox, what it's doing is make an HTTPS request to Google, because they know everything. And at that point, it sends the router information. Firefox is actually built so that it has code that determines the MAC address of your router, your gateway, and also any other routers that it sees. And it sends that to Google. And then Google responds, oh, here are the coordinates. Now again, this isn't very helpful to us because we can't be very malicious about it because it's going to ask us. Now, that's only if we don't know the MAC address. We know the MAC address. If you recall, Anna sent me her MAC address as she visited my malicious site. My malicious site with a triple XSS, which then looked for any router on her network, determined the type of router, potentially logged in, used an XSS, accessed remote malicious JavaScript, which then did an AJAX request to the router, got the MAC address, sent it to me to remote URL. Now I have her MAC address. I then take that URL, I connect to Google, I send this response, I include her MAC address, and now I get her coordinates. Her exact coordinates. Jack Bauer triangulation type. I mean, tell me where Anna Faris is. That's exactly what he said. This is how accurate this is, by the way. This is where Anna Faris is. I took Anna Faris's location right here, that blue circle. I'm serious now. This is actual exploitation of this. And then I compared it to the actual address, where she really was. Driving directions to Casa de Ferris, 30 feet. 30 feet. I looked over at the router. It was 30 feet away. I'm serious. Oh, man. No, this is actually a router that I exploited, and it literally told me the router was 30 feet away from me. I went to this malicious website that I set up without doing anything else, and it told me exactly where I was. Exactly. This is geolocation just gone terrible. Privacy is dead, people. I'm sorry. Thank you. I'll take any questions. I'll also provide links to all of the code for all of these different techniques.
Can't you just go to a bar?
I'm sorry?
Can't you just go to a bar?
Yeah, I guess so. And pick up Anna Faris, yeah, at a bar. Okay. I'm sorry?
Repeat the questions.
Oh, questions?
When they ask, repeat them.
Oh, okay, got it. Yes?
With regards to the guessing of the session,
Yes.
what is the server and cloud node? So you might not be hitting the right server when last name of
That's right. You might not be hitting the right server. There's a couple of things you want to do. You will want to do, you'll want to do an HTTP keep alive so that when you're attacking the server, you always remain on the same connection and you remain on the same process. That is a good point. You may not know what server he's on. So I think there are some ways around that, especially if there's like an Apache server info page. You can get some information and predict that. That also has like process IDs. But yeah, that's a good point. So it is a tough attack.
when you then bypass that and get scripts to run on the local PC, they eventually go.
When you bypass the NAT, I'm sorry?
Well, when you go through the NAT and you get the remote host to do things for you,
Yes.
the fact that that host is password cached or potential websites and information.
Well, if they have cookies, you can do standard XSS and CSRF and things like that.